This is Wastwater, and behind me, somewhere, is Britain's favourite view. I'm here to get a shot for my location guide to the Western Lake District, and I wanted to get that iconic view of the Scafell range reflecting in Wastwater. But unfortunately today, there's lots of low cloud about, and you can't actually see it. I don't actually come here very often. I live on the very eastern side of the Lake District, and Wastwater is on the very west. And it's a bit of a bugger to get to. It's taking me an hour and a half to get here this morning, which is fine. But the problem is for me is that I have to drive past so many other wonderful spots that I often don't make it this far. I think the last time I was actually here was February last year when I came with Andy Maguire. Anyway, just because we cannot get the shot that we came for doesn't mean that there isn't lots else to photograph here. So I'm going to have a look around and see if I can find something else. And actually, there's an island just over there, and I think that could make for a really interesting subject. I use the word really relatively because it's not going to stack up against that. For this first shot, what I've done is I've positioned the island on the extreme right hand side of the frame, and then I'm using the hills on the other side that kind of taper in, kind of leading the eye in towards the island. Well, that's the plan anyway. Those hills on the other side are kind of known as the Wastwater screes, and they're another brilliant shot. But again, today with the low cloud, you're kind of losing the impact of it. Actually, scratch that. These are typical Wastwater conditions, so I'm going to have a go at that shot. I think it could make quite an interesting abstract. I think for me the most important thing for this shot is to get that horizon absolutely perfectly level, because it'd be so obvious if it's even slightly out. That and not clipping the highlights. I really do think that I should at least have a go at getting the view that I came here for. But the wind is picking up and we are starting to lose the reflections. And with the mountains in the cloud and no reflections, we've really got nothing. They do say that patience is a virtue, and in landscape photography nothing could be truer. We often have to stand around waiting for conditions to be absolutely perfect before we can take the shot. And I'm just stood here waiting for a patch of water to die down. I think as far as landscape photography is concerned, patience is definitely a superpower. I think another superpower for landscape photographers is low expectation, because in this game, you never really want to get your hopes up. I'll tell you what we'll do while we're waiting for things to change. We could take a selfie. Remember those? I used to take a lot of them. That could tell a story of a photographer waiting for something to happen. The thing about this shot is you really need the tripod in the frame so that everybody knows that this is a photographer waiting for something to happen. And I can't use this camera because I want to film what I'm doing. So fortunately, I have my old Canon M10, and a third tripod. My camera's all set up now, so I'm going to go ahead and take the shot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand there with my hands in my pockets, trying to make it as obvious that I can that I'm just stood here waiting for something to happen. I was going to try with my hands behind my back, but I'm not Prince Charles. That was quite good fun. I haven't done one of those for such a long time. Anyway, the other thing I've learned about patience is that it doesn't always pay off. And when your patience runs out, that's when it's time to reach for the big stopper. According to the Lee Filters app, I need to run this exposure for 3 minutes 20 seconds. Which is quite a long time, so here's a nice time lapse for you to enjoy. So that shot's okay, but I think it's lacking something. I think what it needs, dare I say it, is a bit of foreground interest, and I've got just the thing. This rock here juts out into Wastwater, pointing towards the view. Now in my eyes, if you could see the view, that could be distracting, drawing attention away from the main subject. But because you can't, we need to include some interest in the photo, and this could be just the thing we're looking for. Because I've got a prominent foreground, what I've had to do is stop down to f16 so I get as much of the image as sharp as possible. And I've focused on the most prominent part of the foreground, and that means that it's likely that the hills in the distance will be slightly soft. But that's okay because we're doing a long exposure. Now, with the smaller aperture, that now means that I'm doing exposures of about 5 minutes 20 seconds. I quite like that shot. The foreground is like a triangle pointing into the distance, and the hills on either side mirror that shape. Now that shot was taken using the Canon 17 to 40mm lens that I've currently got on loan. And a lot of people have been saying that that lens isn't very sharp, and I agree with them, but sharpness isn't my biggest concern in this case. It also adds quite a heavy vignette, particularly when doing long exposures. And although I like to add a vignette to my photos anyway, I'd rather that was my choice and not the lens's. So there you go. That's the story of my trip to Wastwater to photograph Britain's favourite view. I didn't get to see it, but I still had a brilliant time.